Hi and welcome to Law Wiser. Today we bring to you our next discussion in our Women in Law Dialogue series. And I'm actually very excited to have with us today Soumya. And just very quick introduction, Soumya Kumar is a partner, labor and employment at Indus Law based out of the Bangalore office. And she advises on all aspects related to labor and employment laws, including workforce restructuring, internal policies, reduction in force exercises, and also anti-sexual harassment laws. Now, she's also recently begun to navigate the rather vast terrain of trying to understand the modern workplace and what are the various roles and responsibilities of employers. And also, what are the various diversity and inclusion strategies for workplaces in the Indian context? So, hi Soumya, and welcome to Law Wiser. And I'm very happy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Lavanya. It's great to be here, and it's great in the current lockdown situation to actually look forward. It gives me a lot of hope, and uh, I'm charged up to talk to you today.
Yes,
Whatever you
thank you. I know we've been talking offline for a while, so I'm sure the discussion today is going to be very interesting. And so let's get straight down to it. I'm going to start with the basics, okay, which is um, what do diversity and inclusion mean? Because a lot of times, most times they're used together, and also a lot of times they're used interchangeably. But what do they really mean when translated, into situations at the workplace?
Great. I think that's a great kind of starting point to about. I mean, in our discussions today. So yes, there is an important difference between diversity and inclusion, though all the time they're used kind of together and they seem like they're two sides of the same coin, but there's an important difference. So to kind of put it very simply without going into various theories and things like that, diversity is ensuring that there are several voices who are actually brought to the table. So these voices could be, say, disadvantaged castes or different kinds of genders or differently able people. So diversity ensures that there are these different voices which are actually brought to the table. And inclusion ensures that once they are brought to the table, they are actually they're able to speak out and they're actually heard by various people who are also part of discussion. So the idea of using both together means that it's not just enough to bring people, but it's also important to ensure that people are actually heard. So I'll just give you an example. Like in our law school space and in our law firm space, there is a movement or an organization called IDIA, which is Increasing Diversity by Increasing Access. So this was Shamnath Bashir's brainchild, and this is, I think, a great example of a very holistic diversity and inclusion movement within the law school space. So the IDIA movement ensures that it's not the typical elite which is part of law schools and therefore part of the legal fraternity. So they have various chapters in cities, in towns. So it basically distilled down to the grassroots. People who are interested, students are coached to actually enter law school, and they are kind of mentored throughout their journey in law school. So this ensures that it's not just enough if people from different backgrounds just bag a seat at an elite institution, so as to speak, but it actually goes much beyond that, because for all you know, sometimes bagging the seat could be the start of a whole new journey or a whole new problem, so as to speak. So this ensures that both diversity and inclusion is ensured in the at the law school entry and growth phase. So this I would think is a great example of what diversity and inclusion represents in this
Yeah,
context.
yeah. Great. That's actually very helpful. Thank you so much. And that gives a good base to what the rest of the discussion is going to be. And let's now delve a little deeper and just look into what your personal career path has been up till now. I think personally, I feel it's been quite an interesting mix of various types of professional organizations that you worked at. And I believe that you've also had a stint in London, is it, for a while?
Yes.
So different countries as well. I'm just curious to understand if there are any cultural differences in terms of diversity and inclusion that you may have observed, or maybe a lot of times you don't observe them, but now that we're
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about it, when you kind of look back, so just to understand how over those years, what how diversity and inclusion panned out at these places.
Actually great, and like you said, hindsight brings a lot of clarity into what we've gone through over the years. So in Indus Law is actually my fourth place of work, and I worked in law firms both in India and in London. So though it was London, it was pretty much an Indian law firm. So probably it was a similar culture than even as in India. So it was pretty much the same culture. But I actually want to highlight another place where I worked about for about over 2 years. So I was actually part of a Big Four consultancy firm in Bangalore early on when I was fairly junior in my career. It was actually the result of an interesting experiment. So I wanted to see how working in a larger organization or something with a slightly different kind of work, how that would suit my career. So I decided to take that plunge, and I was junior, so I thought, why not? Let's give it a shot. So here is probably the first time where I heard words like diversity, inclusion, equal opportunity, representation, and things like that. And the Big Four was actually quite interesting because on the face of it was a pretty egalitarian kind of a work environment. A large part of that was because the way the chartered accountancy course is structured in our country, it's not a typical college curriculum where people spend the years in college. So it is a mix of professional. It's a professional qualification. So it's a mix of apprenticeship, articleship, and a lot of self study. So you had it was a varied mix of people at this Big Four firm I was in. So people from different cultural backgrounds, different ages, lots and lots of women, and it was interesting because the organization really made that effort to have a lot of team building activities to ensure that people have worked together. There were a lot of offsites, and there were a lot of other programs, such as there was a sabbatical which they had announced for anybody who wants to take a career break for any reason and they can come back. So all of these were extremely progressive systems and processes which this organization had to make sure that people get along and are able to develop a good working relationship. All of this, of course, I realized in hindsight. At that point in time, it's not something you really focus on when you're really junior, especially. But later on, the more time you spend in an organization, you realize what the culture stands for, and perhaps there could be things which even a seemingly egalitarian place can probably do better. So then you realize that, of course, there are power centers, mini power centers, as in any other professional services organization. But also, more interestingly, there were far fewer women partners, especially in the tax and regulatory space of which I was part of. At least back then. I'm hoping the situation has changed since then. But back then, there were very very few women partners, and it was extremely common for women once they reach, say, mid-career level, to take a step back, to kind of go to another city because of marriage, or take a step back because of having children and things like that. So though there were kind of efforts at maybe an individual level, like they would allow flexible work hours, and they would make sure that people would take a lesser load of work. And at that point in time, it seemed voluntary on the part of the woman to actually walk up to the management and say, I need to take a step back. It seemed voluntary, it seemed great. But then you start thinking that, is there something more which organizations can do, or is inclusion just all about flexible hours, ensuring that people are able to manage a reduced work burden or things like that? Is there something that organizations can do to formally recognize that women have a lot more roles in society because of the way, especially the Indian society is structured? Is there something they can do to have like a formal kind of leg up, or support them apart from these ad hoc situations. So that is something which we used to think about, and we used to endlessly debate, even when I was there, because we were at that threshold, and it could happen anytime to us. So we used to debate. Before we could reach a conclusion, I had to leave the organization. But this question has since stayed with me. So the idea was that even in a place which has such a different work environment when compared to a law firm, I genuinely felt that there could be things which they could do to ensure that there are to support the career ambitions of women, so as to speak. So that's the question I left with when I left the organization. So
Yeah, so that's a question that I'm going to pick up now as well, because as I was mentioning that even this is a question that I've been asking myself also, because I've been curating this series. Um, I mean, over the past few months, unfortunately due to COVID, we had to take a bit of a break. But I'm glad to get this going again. But yes, so I've been thinking this myself, and I'm going to ask you this question so that we can kind of together, try to decode this a bit. Obviously, there's no right, wrong way, and everyone has their own perspectives, which come from experiences, etc. And I feel our experiences as well as those of peers and friends and what we have observed. So and so the question is, if I were to frame it in a simple way, is it enough just to give equal opportunities, to men and women employees? I mean, we feel we do that most times, like based on merit, we give them equal opportunities. But is that enough, or do women at times need more enablers, given the very deeply ingrained socio-cultural attitudes? Because it's not just work, right? They have so many roles, responsibilities at home, in the society. Everything is interconnected. So, do you think there's something more, like there's some sort of enablers that women need sometimes, and if yes, where can we start?
great. I think this is a very important question that you've raised, and probably the length of our conversation may not be enough at all, because this is something which has to be addressed at various levels, and we have to have deep, long conversations. But I think the great thing is to start with awareness, right? What we are, what we've experienced, and to kind of build it from there. So that in that context, I'd like to say that Indus Law is actually a great place for women associates and partners. So it offers great opportunities, and there's a great kind of and like talent and commitment to the job is recognized irrespective of gender. So there's equal opportunities given to anybody. But having said that, you used the word enabler, right? And I thought that that's a curious word to use, because it means something. It means something proactive, or what can I go beyond what I see on a day-to-day basis. So in that context, yes, I do believe that law firms in general in India can do a lot more for women associates, for the society at large, because we have a great understanding of how power imbalances work. We are a lot of us are privileged, and we understand the differences between people who have been historically disadvantaged. And we also have great negotiation skills. So we are placed in a fairly unique position to understand society and to kind of make an impact in that sense, to be an enabler, so as to speak. So I'm not going to borrow too much from this, but I just wanted to say that one of my seniors from law school has written a really fascinating book about Indian law firms and feminism. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's called Accidental Feminism, Gender Parity and Selective Mobility Among India's Professional Elite. So it's an academic book, so it's got a fairly longish name, but it's truly fascinating scholarship in my view. Because she's put forth the proposition that effectively Indian law firms are fairly egalitarian in terms of gender. But that's not because of any deliberate intention. It was a series of accidental factors which has resulted in, say, equality, gender equality at the workplace. So she kind of goes into a lot of detail, and then goes into how liberalization happened, and how law firms were set up, and how new law schools were set up. And law schools, this was a great experiment. So men and women applied equally, they were treated equally all through law school, and then when they moved into the professional world, campus hires, it was all equal. But now we've moved away, liberalization happened in 93, so we are quite a way ahead now. And there are a lot more law schools, the workplace has become a lot more complex. So the question that we need to really ask, I think, is equality enough? Or should we move towards something of a more equitable workplace? Is that I think we should start thinking in terms of fairness and equity and not just limit ourselves to equality. They're slightly different, by the way. So, equity and equality is, like you said, treating everybody the same, irrespective of gender. Whereas equity recognizes that there are differences among lived in experiences of people and their personal circumstances, and it actually tailors solution to recognize and bridge that difference. So there's a slight difference now. So I'm of the view that we should think, not just stop at equality, and understand why it is equal, and to kind of move into seeing what more we can do. So this, if in case this sounds a bit abstract and very academic, so I think we can distill it down to maybe say three things. One is that we can recognize that law firms are are still relatively new in India, so they're not probably bound by the traditional, say, banking sector or a lot of sectors where they've been entrenched gender roles and the systems favor one gender alone. So we are at an advantage in that sense. Second is that law firms and the practice of law, the profession of law, is truly transformative. Because if you see with the liberalization, it has truly transformed the lives of so many first generation lawyers in this country. So the law firms can transform. And three is that having reached this position of gender equality or egalitarianism at the workplace, what more can we do? Especially because the workplace is going to become only going to become more complex as the years roll by. So I think those are the questions that we should start. Maybe we may not have answers right now, but I definitely think we need to have some kind of dialogue. And one thing that I can definitely think of at this stage is probably law firms or could kind of think in terms of a mentorship program for especially women associates, if we are talking of how to bridge the gap between to see what more we can do to enable women associates and partners to better realize their potential. If that's what we're talking about, then I think we could have a structured and a formal mentorship program, and perhaps leadership coaching. This is actually done in some professional services firms. And I think we could have one that's probably tailored to the unique challenges and the kind of workplace that law firms is. So this, I think, one is to have these conversations and start thinking about what the law firm should represent, what it can do, and to actually implement a few projects across when the time is right. So I think definitely mentorship. A lot of it could be informal right now. That's what's happening actually. But it could be a lot more formal and structured and at a firm level. So that is one thing which I definitely think we can do to kind of move on from the equality discussions that we've been having. So we need to do much more, enable a lot more women associates to become realize their potential better. So I think that is something we can definitely do. And personality-wise, also, I'm a bit of an introvert. So I recognize how it could be really difficult for a lot more women who are probably naturally introverted or conditioned to become introverted. It's difficult to kind of just shine at a client meeting right from the beginning. So there could be some kind of an acceptance or a support structure to say, hey, there are different qualities that we recognize, and people feel comfortable expressing themselves in different ways. So I think that is a kind of workplace we should work towards.
So thanks for breaking that down so well. And before you go, I'm just going to ask a very quick question. Given that we've been in this pandemic for now over a year, and this may go on for, we're not really sure how long, and in this present remote working structure, which going forward may become hybrid. I don't see us going back to work 5 days a week for a very long time. Just curious to know if do you feel that's going to have any impact on diversity and inclusion, either strategies or implementation?
Oh, definitely, definitely. The workplace, the physical space as we knew it is not been there for more than a year now, and we need to. While we've adapted, I don't know if we have kind of formally embraced it. So I think somewhere all of us are hoping that we will be able to go back and have a semi, normal kind of a working sense of working going forward also. But this is a very tough question, Lavanya. I don't really have an answer at the moment. And I know that at Indus Law, we are debating and brainstorming as to see how we can build engagement better and how we can ensure that associates feel engaged and are part of a team and things like that. It is really challenging, especially for freshers who have not been exposed to a physical work environment. They actually don't know. So they come in fresh from law school, and even lateral hires who've probably had a very different work environment. So it's the toughest on them to kind of adapt to this completely. So for people who've been there and working remotely, that foundation is already there. But for people to build that foundation in a completely remote setup is extremely challenging. So just to give you an example, you can't ambush somebody and say, "Hey, I have a quick question. Can you please answer this question?" So you can't do that anymore. And even when you're having a casual chat, there's so many cues you pick up from the person. Then you reach out to them or not reach out to them later on. So all of that is completely lost. We're all working we don't know what the other person is doing just before the call. So we've lost that sense of the personal interaction, which is so essential in our profession specifically. So I think one of the ways we should definitely use technology a lot more than what we are using, and in a probably more structured and kind of disciplined manner, and not just say that client engagements take precedence, but we should actively take the time out and to handle to ensure that associate engagement is part of the larger culture. So I think we should first actively devote specific time towards that. Couple of things we can do is have more say HR check-ins. When if you know that something is not personally okay, make that effort, call them up and then talk to them and say, are you okay? And it need not necessarily be about work, because we're so busy in our own remote working world. Oftentimes we just talk about work and then we don't engage anymore. It's happened sometimes. So maybe take that time out. HR or even the immediate senior should make that effort. Not even could, they should make that effort going forward. And we could have, say, something like a skip level review. So if you're working basically have reviews where your immediate senior is not the only one doing the review. So you could skip that and then have somebody more senior doing the review. So not only does the junior get the visibility and people are aware, they're able to build that connect with somebody who's not their immediate senior also. And from a law firm perspective, it's for some disciplines may not work for advisory always, have cross-staffing. So there could be some kind of informal teams that have already built up within the organization. So try and break that and then staff somebody else on another matter to the extent possible. So I think these are some of the immediate things we can do, but like long-term structural changes, actually deeply thinking about remote working is just going to take some more time, I think. So I don't have a clear answer, but I think some things we have to do definitely at this point.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. I mean, I don't think any of us have all the answers. We're all trying to grapple with we're calling it the new normal, but in a sense, I mean, it's not really normal, right? So
not at all.
Yeah, it's far from that, and yeah. But thank you so much. I really enjoyed this chat, and I'm glad that you could take our time to be on Lawwiser today. Thank you so much, Soumya, and we hope that we will see you soon again.
Yes, absolutely my pleasure, Lavanya. Thank you. Thanks again.